on how to create a parallax effect within Photoshop. So this parallax effect is basically when you take a still image and you have the foreground is cut out from the background, and you fill in the spot behind the person or the foreground image, and you move them independently so it looks like it's moving in 3D. So it's actually a fake parallax effect. So let's go ahead and get started. So on the assignment that you're going to follow along with me, I gave you this image right here. So if you go here, go ahead and download this from Classroom. It looks like this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and download that. We're going to find it in our, so right now I've got it on Recents. So I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to open with Adobe Photoshop. Cool. So this is what our artboard is going to look like for now. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to use the pen tool. We're going to cut this out. Okay, we're going to cut them out independently so we can move them independently. And then we're going to fill in the background using the Content Aware tool. And I'll show you how to do that. So go ahead and select P for your pen tool. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and go to Paths over here on the right hand side. And I'm going to create a new path layer. I'm going to name this left hand. And I'm going to go ahead and start cutting out this hand. So you'll want to cut in about a pixel or two below the arm and the hand, just because you don't want any of the gray showing up. And you guys can go ahead and pause this video if you need to, and play it again once you get your hand and arms cut out. But just make sure that you are cutting these out as two separate elements. And I'll show you why here in a couple minutes. And don't forget to use your spacebar to move around your artboard. And I always like to keep my artboard kind of zoomed way in. So you can either hit Command plus to zoom in or Command minus to zoom out. And then you can use your press and hold the spacebar and click and drag your artboard, and it'll allow you to stay zoomed in and see all the things you need to see. So that's just a quick little tip for you guys. Okay, and then when you're done with that part, make sure that your point is out here outside of the artboard, and then you want to go over here until your pointer changes like this, and then you want to close it up. Okay, so that's my first one, and then now I'm going to go ahead and go over to my paths, and I'm going to create a new path layer. I'm going to name this right. Let's just name it right arm, because that's what it actually is. And then I'm going to click on right arm again because I had that one selected. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this one out now. And remember to start outside of the artboard. That's just so we can make sure that we get this whole thing selected. And see how I messed up just there? If you hit Command Z, it'll go back and it'll still be connected, and you can continue on with your selections. So anytime you ever mess up, you can always Command Z to undo one and then start over. You can also hold Option and then you can change the handlebars here to make your line curve the way you need it to. So don't forget about that as well. And notice how I'm not spending too much time getting all the small details on this. It's going to be so small that it won't make a big difference. Okay. Alright, so then once again I clicked outside of my artboard to create another point there, and then I closed up the point where I first started. Okay, let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, cool. So now we can start working on cutting out the background, or the arms from the background. So here's a little trick that I didn't teach you guys, but if you hold Command down and you click on one of these squares, it'll just make that a selection right away, which is kind of fun. Okay, so for this we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go back to layers, so we're going to make that selection. We're going to go back to layers. I'm going to unlock that just because I like to do that. And we're going to hit Command C to copy. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to Command V to paste. And let's just go ahead and name that left arm. Okay. Let's make another layer. Go ahead and name that right arm. Go back to paths. Hold Option. Click on the square right there under paths. It'll make our selection. Go back to layers, and it's important now to select this layer 0 right here because that's what we want to copy. So we're going to Command C to copy. We're going to paste it onto the right arm layer, so we're going to Command V. Okay, so if any of that was above your head or if I went too fast, the great thing about this video is that you can stop it and you can rewind and you can watch it as many times as you need to. Okay, so now if we turn off layer 0, let's just name that background while we're at it. Okay, and I can go ahead and click off of that layer, and you can see that we've got our hands cut out. But the cool thing is, if I click on these, they're independent. Okay, so I can do some different animations with these independently, and that's what we want. Cool. So let's go ahead and turn off those two layers and turn back on our background layer. And right now we want to work on getting rid of these arms. So the best way to do this is to create a new layer. I'm going to drag that below the arm layer. Okay, and we're going to use the Content Aware Move tool. So you can hit J on your keyboard and it'll select this guy right here. Okay, so there's a thing we need to make sure that we have selected first. We want to make sure that up here under mode that it says move, and then structure I have at 6, but you can leave that as it is. And then the most important thing to do now is to have sample all layers selected. And the reason we do that is because we have a blank layer here. So if we go ahead and trace around our arms and hands, if we didn't have this selected, it wouldn't be able to do anything because this layer has nothing on it. So that's why we're going to sample all layers. That's going to sample down here and allow us to do what we need to do. Okay, so make a rough outline of your hands. And all we're going to do is we're going to click and we're going to drag it off like this. So make sure that the end of your arm gets past the end of the fingers. You're going to let go. You're going to accept this change by either hitting this up here, the check mark, or you can hit return. Okay, so before you go on, I want you to hit delete. Before you deselect, I want you to hit delete. And all that's going to do is it's going to delete these arms right here because we don't need those. And since we put this on its own layer, we can go ahead and delete those. Okay, so now you can hit Command D to deselect. That's Command D as in David, right? Or deselect. And we're going to do that one more time because we've got some fingers here that kind of got left behind. So I'm going to trace around this thumb right here. I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to trace around this finger right here. Okay, and we want to make sure that we are on this layer right here. So let's go ahead and rename that to be I don't know, concrete. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're on that layer, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click and we're going to drag, but we need to click and drag. So back behind here is another layer. So let's click and drag way down here where we know that that layer is not anymore. The reason we're going to do that is because we're going to delete it, and if we moved it up here, it would delete part of the cover up, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. Actually, I'll just show you now. So if I have it here, okay, we hit enter, okay, it covers these up, but we need to get rid of these. So if I hit delete, okay, you see it deletes because there's part of the wall right here that we've covered up, actually just right here. Okay, so we got to make sure, so I'm going to go back, Command Z. I'm going to make sure that I click and drag these and move them down into a place where I don't have anything covering up the hands in the background. So I'm going to hit return to accept that change, and I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard to delete these two parts down here. So then you'll notice up here, it did a pretty good job of filling in those where those fingers were. Okay. So now hit Command D to deselect those two, and we can go ahead and turn back on the right arm and the left arm. And so yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this background because I don't need it anymore. Actually, I'm sorry, that's not right. Don't do that. What we can do now is we can hold Shift, so select the background, hold Shift, and we can select concrete. And I'm going to right click out here, and I'm going to convert this to a smart object. That's going to combine it into one layer. Okay, so now I've got that layer. If I ever needed to edit that photo again, and we did this non-destructively if you've noticed. So if I double click on this smart object right here, it opens it up in a new tab, and I've still got my original image here. I just have this on top. So if I needed to make any tweaks to this, I would do it on this menu or on this screen. I would hit Command S to save, and then I would just hit Command W to close it. I'll go ahead and save it, and then it closes out, and then it'll automatically update on this new one. Cool. So the hard part pretty much is done. So now we get to do the fun part. Okay, so now we can move this background, okay, and it looks like it's just a normal background, right? So that's where our parallax effect is going to come in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and bring up our timeline. So to do that, we're going to click on Window up here at the top. We're going to scroll down until we see Timeline, okay? And then, okay, so here's one thing that I know that you guys have been struggling with. This, by default, is pretty thin, okay? It's pretty small. So to make this taller, you hover over this darker part. See this darker part right here, this darker line? Okay, if you hover over it, your pointer is going to change to this little arrow, and then you can click and drag that up. That way, if you have multiple layers, which we do, you'll be able to see them a lot better. Okay, so go ahead and click Create Video Timeline, and it's going to have your right, left, and then the concrete wall behind you. Cool. We're going to leave our frame rate the same, okay? But we're going to change this to be about 2 or 3 seconds. So let's just make it 3 seconds. So the way that we do that is simply just take this right here. So this is our work area. So between this right side and this left side over here is our work area, and everything in between is what's going to export out. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag this over a little bit. Let's see. I'm going to click it and drag it to 3 seconds right here. So 3:00F, that means 3 seconds. Okay? All right, so what I want to do now is I kind of want to scale my wall up a little bit because we're going to be moving it. Okay, so go ahead and click on your concrete wall layer, hit Command T. I'm going to zoom out so we can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to hold Option, and I'm going to click and drag this up a little bit. Because I want that to kind of be, I want there to be enough spaces where I can move this. So I'm going to move it all the way to the right because I'm going to be moving my wall this way. You can do it however you want, but we just want to make sure that it's a little bit bigger than our artboard because we're going to be moving it in a direction. So that's where our parallax effect is going to come from. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to click the drop down on concrete, and then I'm going to scroll down so I can scroll down. You can also click and drag this up, remember. And I'm going to scrub all the way to the right, okay. I want it to end here. So I'm going to click transform, or yours might say, what's the other one? Position, okay. So whatever, hopefully it says transform, okay. And I'm going to click the stopwatch right there. Now I'm going to drag this back over to 0, 0, and then I'm going to drag this to the right a little bit, and then it's going to create a new keyframe. So now when I scrub through time, it should move. So let me preview that in real time. So to do that, I'm going to scrub all the way back to the left to 0, 0, and I'm going to hit play. Okay. I think that's probably a little bit too much, so I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that, this last one. I'm going to move back in time, okay, and I'm going to move this just a little bit. Okay, so now when I hit play, it's a lot slower. Cool. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the stop. I'm going to scrub all the way to the left again, and I think I want to rotate my arm. So I think I should be able to do that. So if I hit position, hit the stopwatch, move forward in time, and then if I Command T to rotate it, I'm going to push it in a little bit, and then I'm going to rotate it up. And then I'm going to hit return. And it didn't do anything. Alright, so I guess you can't rotate it necessarily. So I'm going to hit Command Z to bring that back. And then I guess what I can do is just move it. So I've got the position here. I'm going to move forward in time. Maybe I want to just move to the end, and then maybe I just want to move it up like that. So then it should create a new keyframe. Okay, and then maybe I want to move this arm. So click on that arm, or actually select that layer. Okay, we'll push that back up. Click the drop down, click on position. Then maybe I want to like move this arm this way. So I make my keyframe there and move forward in time, maybe to the end right here, and this I'm going to move it a little bit. Okay, so now we can preview it. Okay, so you guys get the you get the point there. So maybe if you don't like the way it's turning out, you can always click on that layer and then click the stopwatch again, and it'll get rid of those keyframes. Okay, so if I didn't like that, maybe I can click the stopwatch again, and then maybe just move it a little bit. Maybe I want to move it down like that. Cool. I think that looks a little bit better. Or maybe I want to do this to where it's like they kind of start together and then they come out like that. So yeah, on a parallax effect, you know, you might want to cut out a person from a landscape background and just have the background zoom in a little bit. So I can show you that as well. So let me Command Z to kind of go back. I'm going to click the stopwatch on here, click the stopwatch on I'll just click the stopwatch on everything to get rid of them. And this time I'm going to keep the arms, keep them stationary, and then for the concrete I'm gonna zoom it in. Okay, so click the stopwatch, scrub forward in time, Command T. Well, maybe I want to zoom out. Okay, since I've already zoomed in, maybe I want to zoom out. So I'm going to hold Option. It's going to scale from the middle, and I'm going to zoom back in. Hit Return. It should create my keyframe right there. So now my arms are the same, but the background's moving a little bit. Cool. And then I've got mine. If I click on the gear icon right there, I've got it looped, my loop playback at infinite right now. So it's going to loop playback forever. Okay, so now all we got to do is export it. So you can either hit Command Option Shift S, and that will bring up your save for web, if it will ever think here. Or I can hit cancel, or I can go to File, Export, Save for web. So that was Command Option Shift S if you like hotkeys. Okay, so now, so a lot of you have asked questions about this right here. If you can click around, it's always zoomed in. You can click around to see that, or you can click right here to zoom out. Okay, so by default it always zooms in, and I'm not sure why it does that, but you can view it by clicking on it and dragging it, or you can click this right here and zoom out. Okay, so all we have to do now is make sure that it's on GIF, which it automatically was. We don't need to change anything with this because we just want to keep it the same. We're going to keep the image size the same, and then looping forever. So if you didn't quite get that over here, you can select that here, or you can say other, and you can see how many times you want it to loop. And then we're going to hit save. And then I'm going to name mine Parallax. And to my desktop, and I'm going to hit save. So for this assignment, you guys can just export it out and then go to the assignment, and then you can upload your GIF to that assignment. And then you'll be able to find that under your Finder, and then hopefully you saved it to your desktop. Okay, and then you can press the space bar to preview that. And that's basically it. Thanks for watching, guys.